Welcome to another episode of Tax Leaders Unplugged. Our guest today is Nora Bafrouri, and Nora is the Global VAT and Tax Technology Lead at Trane Technologies, which previously was a business unit of Ingersoll Rand. She has a Big Four background, worked at EY and Deloitte, where she started her career. And outside of work, or outside of tax even, Nora has a lot of activities. I will only mention some here. She's among them the co-chair at Women's Network Enterprise. She's in the advisory board at the Play for Peace Academy. And she's in general a very outspoken, a very big advocate for diversity and inclusion. Nora is based in Belgium, and in this episode today we will discuss the journey from VAT and mere compliance to actual value and how technology, diversity and inclusion can supercharge this journey. Welcome, Nora.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this great intro.
So let's kick it off, Nora. I've checked your LinkedIn profile and I've seen that you are speaking quite some languages. Among them, I saw Arabic, Chinese, Spanish, and then more obviously for the ones that are located in Belgium, French and Dutch, and then English. Tell us a bit what drives you to learn all these languages and how did you get to the level of speaking them?
Well, for me, it's important to be able to connect with people, to learn about other people, their cultures, to be able to travel and make myself understood, and also understand the others. So for me, learning languages is a real pleasure. So that's why I started to learn all these languages, to really connect with people. So it's about connecting with people.
And any specific classes or trainings you then take? Is this Duolingo or anything more professional?
No, it's actually quite like real classes. Like when I was very young, I started to take, well, not very young, but when I was a teenager, when people were going to the cinema and so on, I was taking some language classes in the evening. So 6 to 12 hours a week of language classes just to be able to learn Spanish or even learn Dutch because I'm a French-speaking professional. And Dutch was important in Belgium. I was living in Brussels to find a job. It's very important to be fluent in Dutch. So I was taking some Dutch classes, English classes as well. So I took a lot of classes and I have to say, I try to practice a lot. So it's not just about learning with the teachers. It's really about practicing, traveling and not being afraid of talking to people. And that's what I'm doing best.
Do you also then practice in the professional context or only when you're traveling privately?
No, absolutely. The languages have been very helpful for me in my career. I'm also responsible for Latin America, for example. So in Latin America, the most spoken language is Spanish. It's not really English. So when you want to make sure that you are engaging people, you have a project, you are engaging people, you want to make sure that your message passes across and that you can have people on board. It's important to speak to them in their language. So I've been able to use my Spanish at least in Latin America. Not that it was great, but, I think people appreciate when you're making an effort. Certainly when you're working with them in a different region, you are not there telling them what to do. You are trying to understand them. And I think it's a totally different dynamic when you work with stakeholders.
Yeah, I can imagine it's it's probably more than a good icebreaker. And then to your point, bonding, networking, and giving a signal that you do the effort to get to know each other. So has it also helped in relation to external parties professionally, like maybe the tax authorities or?
The tax authorities as well. We are active pretty much everywhere in the world. So obviously we've been able to use my French, my Spanish, my Dutch as well, meeting with the Dutch authorities in the Netherlands, obviously in France as well. That's easy for me. I'm a French-speaking person, but really using all these languages have been helpful. I've worked with Middle East as well. So there I was, sometimes, asked to understand, not that I was speaking with tax authorities, but really understand what was going on. So yeah, I think I've used pretty much all of them. The only one that I did not practice in a professional environment, that was Chinese. I haven't got to that stage yet. But I'm also a bit less fluent in Chinese, obviously. I'm fluent in the other languages, but less fluent in Chinese. It's a more difficult language to absorb when you live in Europe.
I can imagine that. I once started Mandarin, and then I started with the phonetic writing, which is typically the beginning. Did I don't know, a couple of classes, but then very soon dropped off because it was just too intense, too much investment. But I regret it. Maybe one day I'll pick it up. What language for you is missing in your portfolio?
I would like to be honest, I would like to deepen my understanding in what I know. For example, in Arabic, I think it's becoming more and more important with the Middle East developing, from a professional perspective, developing, their tax systems. I would like to be able to exchange with them the way I'm able to exchange with the Dutch authorities or with the Spanish authorities. I would like to deepen my knowledge in Arabic. And Chinese, that's a language that I really liked. I worked in Hong Kong in the past, and living there, I was really trying to learn the language there on while living there. And that's a language. It's actually Chinese make very much sense when you understand how they build their words, their sentences. I prefer learning more than what I already know than jumping to another language. But yeah, another language like Italian wouldn't be bad.
One day, maybe one day. Um,
At the time.
in the introduction, I already referred a bit to your wide list of activities outside of tax, so to say. So one of them is the women emerging movement, so a non-profit movement redefining leading for women, right? You're active in that. Tell us a bit about the organization and your exact role and why you're doing it.
Yeah, so I've been invited to join the Women Emerging program. It's the Brussels expedition. So in Brussels, they have invited a number of talented expeditors, let's say, leaders active in very different areas, arts, academic, very different areas. And we're coming together to redefine the notion of leadership. And in order for us to do this, we need to deep dive on our essence to lead. What is our purpose to lead? What is influencing our leadership style? What are the elements influencing our leadership style? And the purpose is really to understand that and ultimately to build something together for our cities, the city that we're living in. So we're hoping that we will be able to build something for Brussels. Having this expedition in Brussels makes sense. Brussels is a very cosmopolitan city. So we're hoping we're going to be able to make an impact at the end of our journey. For the time being, we are still in our own introspection.
All right. And so this is then a group of women in different leadership roles coming together, sharing experiences, and then taking them to apply it on the city of Brussels? Or is this also meant then to be applied in your day-to-day life and in your professional lives?
It's everything. So you are really deep diving to understand why you're leading in a certain way. For example, if you can have a very straightforward leadership style, why is that? Is that coming from, I don't know, is that coming from your previous experiences, from your trauma, so it's really trying to understand what influences leadership. So it's, I would say, first an introspection, really about what is leadership. Is leadership that we know it today the same leadership for us as women? We know that a number of things are set, set for male leadership. When you ask people, there are studies showing that when you ask people about what is a leader, they vision a leader as being a man, a strong man, with with power. And so is that the notion of leadership? And that's a little bit what we are exploring together, with at the end of the day, trying to build something together that will be impactful for people in our city and Brussels in general.
Inspiring. Is there already anything which you, from the sessions, learned which could potentially be relevant for the audience here in the podcast, where we have a lot of leaders, I guess both female and male? Anything you want to share? Anything that is top of mind?
It's always when you deep dive on your own leadership style and your essence, your purpose to lead, you learn a number of things, and that makes you also understand why other people lead like this. So I would say, try sometimes when you have your own notion of leadership, like what is being a strong leader, what is being a good leader, maybe trying to understand why this is important and why others lead differently. And I think it allows you to understand people when you try to see things from a different perspective. These are not things that we think about on a daily basis.
Yeah.
We're just leading and we don't know why, but we're leading that way. But when you pause sometime and you're trying to reflect about why you're doing that this way, sometimes you find out that there are more elements impacting this, and maybe other people react differently than you, and that's their leadership style that you need to be able to understand in order to be able to collaborate with each other. So yeah, I would say that having this journey, this introspection yourself will help you understand the others and probably collaborate with the others as well. So for me, the learning is really the introspection and what could influence others. Why are they reacting this way when they are rude or when they are too nice? You know, because sometimes some women can be very nice, and that's because empathy is great for them. That's because their motherhood sometimes, you know, is so important to them that they want to reflect that motherhood within their team. So it's important when you do that deep dive, you learn a number of things about yourself and about other people around you.
All right. I'm a big fan of your LinkedIn activity, the posts you're making, and I keep always an eye on them. So I see frequently that you make posts around diversity, inclusion at Trane Technologies, but also outside it. So as I said, you are a big advocate for it. Tell us a bit about what it means for you, why you think it should get more attention, what learnings we can share, or what value it can bring to the people in the audience here if they double down on it.
It's really about my values as a person within Trane Technologies and outside Trane Technologies. It's about having the sense of justice, you know, humanity, caring about equity. That's who I am. I am myself coming from a very diverse background. So I always believe that once you make it, you know, as a diverse profile, let's say, it's important to pay it forward. And if today I have the opportunity to make the difference around me, whether it's within Trane Technologies or in my community, in my family, with my friends, then I will always take the opportunity to make that difference, to make an impact. So I'm lucky that at Trane Technologies, we have the same values. We embrace diversity and inclusion, and we're not doing it because, you know, it's not just that it's the right thing to do. We really believe in that. And that's really nice to work for an organization that allows me not only to succeed in my job, but also to live my values through activities that are important for me. And so today I'm the Women's Network Enterprise co-chair, so leading the biggest business resource groups in the organization with another colleague in the US. And that's really allowing us to put programs in place as well as resources and tools to empower our female talent. We are in an industry that is very male dominant. It's very, you know, technology related, engineering. It's very much focusing on the STEM industry. And by definition, we don't have a lot of female talent coming out of these studies. And so if we as an organization don't take measures to promote this type of studies with young girls outside the organization, or even with our female talents in the organization, you're losing that. You're losing this pipeline of female talent. And we know that the organization that perform best are the organization that have diverse talents in their leadership teams. And that is very important, because if you want to make sure that you thrive as an organization, you need to make sure that people feel like they can come with their best selves to the office. So you need to live these values, and not everybody has that culture, right? A lot of people talk about diversity and inclusion, but is it really embedded in their DNA? Is it really embedded in their culture? And I can be happy that it is the case at Trane Technologies. So it's a real passion for me to lead these initiatives here in the company and outside the organization. I'm trying to be involved in activities that are helping unprivileged people or people from minority groups. I consider myself coming from these groups as well. So yeah, it's important for me to pay it forward.
And when you look at the, let's say, the tax community, do you think there is sufficient balance in the gender mix and overall diversity, or can it be better? What's your perception of it?
Yeah, so tax is mainly part of a finance organization, and studies show that in the finance organization we have a good balance. So finance are studies that women study. So again, by definition, you have more female talents coming out of these finance studies. I do think that in the tax world, I know a lot of female tax leaders around me in the VAT function and in the tax organization. So I do think that we have a good representation of female talent and in the tax world in general. So yeah, I do think that's the case. In terms of cultural diversity, I don't know that it is the case just yet. But it's coming. The world is changing, so it's probably coming. But we're not too bad in the tax field.
It's good to hear. Good to hear. If we look at your professional role right now, so your role at Trane Technologies, you relentlessly focus on the digitalization of the indirect tax function. I've seen a lot of posts around it already. You go frequently on stage about it. Tell us tell the audience a bit, like when and how did you get hooked with technology and the digitalization journey in general?
Yeah, I have to say, in the beginning, I was not a technology person at all. So could barely start my laptop or restart my laptop when I had an issue. But the tax technology came a little bit naturally when I joined the organization, Ingersoll-Rand back then, today Trane Technologies, today Trane Technologies. It was in 2017, and I was responsible for VAT, the VAT team. So VAT advisory and VAT compliance, and technology was not part of the indirect tax function back then. I joined, but I immediately noticed that there was an issue with the vision and the goals for technology, indirect tax technology on the one hand, and us as indirect tax advisory and compliance. And we had conflicting priorities. What was important for us was not especially important back then for the technology team, I think. And that's because they had their own projects, which I totally understand. And it's my boss in the US that asked me whether I would be okay to take over the technology team back then. And I thought it totally made sense, because if you look at the indirect tax lifecycle, you have strategy and planning, which is mainly, the legislative part, the regulatory part, the legal part of the job, and implementing that in the supply chain. And then you have the compliance. You have the compliance, which today is also automated. So really filing tax returns and so on is highly automated. So if you want to make sure that you are able to translate your tax advices in millions of transactions, you need to leverage technology. And I understood that immediately when I joined Trane Technologies. I understood that the success of the indirect tax function would be in technology, because I always say you can be the best tax advisors that you want. If you're not able to translate that into your system, you're going to make millions of mistakes for multinationals like us. So investing in technology was immediately part of my strategy. We have developed our indirect tax lifecycle in a very digitalized and automated way. And so for us, in order to perform as a tax experts, we understand that we need to leverage tax technology. And so far, it was a good investment.
If you would give yourself a score on maturity, let's say on when looking at technology and overall digitalization, how much would you think you would be? Would you be ahead of the pack, in the middle? I guess definitely not behind, but what would you say?
To be honest, I attend a lot of conferences, so I can benchmark ourselves, Trane Technologies, within the industry. And I dare to say that we are part of the people who are best in class. I can honestly say that. At least in the EMEA region, we are trying to replicate our systems and solutions in the other regions. But I dare to say that because we have a very, very small tax technology team, but we are able to lead 44 jurisdictions efficiently. And I think you don't get that in one day. You must have the right provider. You must have the right tax solutions. You must have the right way to address the gaps that you are facing on a daily basis. You must have the right engagement with stakeholders. You must make sure that other people know how to feed the system as well. And I think by working together with other functions, and I think this is where we are a little bit strong, we are able to engage other functions to make sure that we get the right data in the system. Now, obviously, we still learn, and obviously we are still finding out things that we can improve every day. And obviously that's what technology does. It's every day evolving. And so we are every day reassessing what we can do best. But I think that we are a highly automated indirect tax function. Obviously we can still do better, but I'm confident that we have all the pieces of the indirect tax lifecycle digitalized.
And should, in your eyes, every tax function have somebody who dedicatedly looks after technology? Is that a requirement, you think?
It depends on your organization. I cannot say that one solution fits all, because it depends on how you are organized. We are an organization that likes to do things in-house for more control, for better management. We believe that we can do things better in-house than externally, at least within the indirect tax function. So knowing that I like to handle this in-house, it's very difficult to get FTEs in any organization nowadays. Then you have to be able to use softwares and technology. And so for us, it's the right solution because of our in-house management. I have been talking to other organizations, sometimes even competition, and they did the opposite choice. Competition, for example, is going for outsourcing, but then, you're talking about totally different budgets when you are going for outsourcing, and it's a totally different type of management. You don't get to know if things are done correctly or not the way, you don't get to know your organization the same way when you outsource. So yeah, it depends on your strategy, on your global tax strategy. What is good for one is not good for the other, but I would recommend to have a tax technology person simply because of the fast evolving indirect tax landscape. We know we have a lot of regulatory changes in the indirect tax legislation. And if you want to make sure that at least you can outsource, but someone in your organization needs to understand how to translate this new piece of legislation into your own system, into your own processes. What is the impact? So you at least need to have someone that speaks that language to know what is best for the company. So yes, I do recommend to have tax technology people in an organization.
And I like that, let's say, ambitious statement you made that, and let's leave it even in the middle, whether it's true or not, but I like the overall the ambition that you say, like, we insource because we believe that we can do it better when we insource, which I think is a very inspiring statement. So that's good stuff. As a company that is best in class, I'm wondering, when you look a bit at the recent things you tried out, the technological initiatives you took, maybe AI, are there any experiments or things you can share with the audience that best-in-class companies these days are trying?
Listen, when you talk about AI, I think there is a lot of confusion. Not a lot of people know what is AI. For me, you have traditional AI that we have been using for 15 years now. And I think that's what people don't understand. I think when people talk about AI, they only think about generative AI. And generative AI is very new for the development of tax solutions, I would say. We don't develop those solutions. Our service providers are doing that. I've been talking to some of them, and there are some solutions currently being developed, but I don't think we are there just yet. I don't think we have, the solution that allows you to do it automatically, just like when you type it in ChatGPT and then it's there. Obviously, you can leverage solution like, we have our internal ChatGPT that we call Eva. And that is very helpful. Today, I was looking for some, tax simplification rules in the Netherlands. And I was like, instead of going to my tax advisor, I just typed it in our internal ChatGPT, and I just typed, okay, what are the tax rules in this area? And so it's a good, you can leverage that to give you some indication. It's never going to be the final answer. So if you use it wisely, you can do a number of things. For example, the legislative landscape is changing a lot. You can put all the changes and say, this is my business. How does that impact us? So you can do some small things, but I'm mainly leveraging traditional AI, which is really solution like, our tax compliance solution has AI, data analytics has AI, matching data. So that's what I'm leveraging much more today. But for tomorrow, I'm very alert about what could be the solution that our providers are developing, and I'm always listening. But today, what I've learned from generative AI is not there yet for me to leverage that to already implement that internally. I am still busy with leveraging traditional AI.
Yeah. And if you think it's specific use cases, because you refer to checking legislative developments or, I mean, regulatory changes in general, any other use cases where, and let's leave in the middle what type of technology it is, but when you look at what is available, you as a best-in-class team, any specific use cases you see for technology which can be inspiring for the audience? You also refer to data analytics. It's an obvious one, but can you be a bit more precise? Specific jobs that you have automated or specific tasks that you can now do with support of tools?
Yeah, as far as we're concerned, we're automating a lot. So I think when you look at the indirect tax lifecycle, all the tax rules that need to be implemented in the system, we are using tax determination solutions. So we are using a global tax engine in order to make sure that the system picks up the right tax treatment in our invoices to the customers. And also on the AP side, invoices, making sure that our suppliers are billing us the right tax amount on their invoices. So we are leveraging tax engines, which is it's actually, I'm in favor of tax engines because otherwise you need to customize your internal ERP system, which is a lot of work, doing the testing. And then you need to be very alert of all the changes that are happening all across the globe. When you are responsible for the globe, it's very difficult to make all those. Well, we are doing the follow-up, but to make all these system configurations and then testing and so on. So it's very practical to have a service providers that automates that and tests that on their end, and making sure that this is available to you. So we have the tax determination solution, obviously tax compliance. In our tax compliance, we are using the data that we're having in the system, and then we are having those internal controls, those data quality checks, to making sure that the data makes sense when we report that. So these are some of the things we are doing. We are leveraging reconciliation tools like Ultrix, moving now to DataIQ. That now we have in indirect tax, you are submitting your tax returns, but you also have electronic invoicing. And so the data that you report with electronic invoicing may not be the same as the data that you have in your purchase and sales ledgers. And why is that? So you need to be able to reconcile in a world that is highly digitalized. And when you look at tax authorities, they are themselves using AI. They are themselves using data analytics. How many times have I received, I've even seen in the questions from tax authorities, I have seen the shift from why are you saying that you do not have a PE to you did not report the same as your supplier and your customer. So while in the past we were talking more with tax authorities about the tax treatment of the operation, they're not looking at that anymore. They're like, hey, you didn't report consistently with your suppliers. Why is that? And so it's very important that you can defend your data. It's very important that you understand what is happening. So this is where we have been investing in our controls, in tax compliance solutions, data analytics, really a lot of internal controls, setting up rules to make sure that data is consistent when we report it.
Yeah, and I like the reference you make to the tax authorities and their overall, let's say, behavior. I think there used to be a kind of an information asymmetry between the taxpayer and the tax authorities, which was always in the advantage of the taxpayer most of the time. But I see that shifting a bit towards tax authorities, which in some cases, it's not for all taxpayers, but where they sometimes are ahead of the game because they have more information about the taxpayer than the taxpayer themselves. Does that make sense? Do you agree with that? Have you also?
And I would say that they are always ahead of the games. They are always ahead of the game. That's my feeling, because we are moving from a system where tax authorities were doing post audits. So we were submitting returns and then they were doing post audits, to a system where they tell us, hey, you have an invoicing and you have real-time reporting and you have SAFTI and I don't know what, and this is what you reported during the months. Why is your tax return different? So they have shifted the burden of proof to us. And if you don't have strong systems and strong data. And if you're not strong in what you're declaring and saying, hey, I know we have declared that through invoicing or real-time reporting, but that was not entirely correct because some invoices have been canceled in the meantime. And they have been canceled for that reason because, I don't know, there was a commercial reason to cancel the invoice. And so you need to be very strong in order to go against tax authorities. And I think this is something we have understood. Obviously, we are still in the journey. I'm not saying that we are, we are still in the journey, but I can say that when we have queries from tax authorities, we are able to justify. And I think we are able, in the beginning, we're also like, okay, what's going on? Why do we have, but then when we dig into it, we are able to justify. And I think this is what is important. And then we give the confidence to tax authorities. We explain them with like, hey, we are using these tools and these tools are working this way. And that's why what we report is actually much stronger than what you have.
Makes sense. Yeah. We have very often in the audience like tax teams that are either small or maybe just one-man ladies or men shows. So what would you recommend for tax teams that are just getting started, that don't have a lot of tools yet in place? Maybe they are in fast-growing companies, or as said, for the first time, the tax function is installed. Any recommendations you would have if you would start over again today with a clean sheet on where to get started?
I would do the same because I think I tackled this the right way. I would do the same. But what I would say is that as a tax professional, we are being perceived as a cost center. And we always come up with, oh, there is a change in the law. And then I need some budget, because I need to be compliant. And it is not about compliance only anymore. The business doesn't need you to just comply and submit correct tax returns. We need to create value for the business. And I have used the technology function to create value for the business. We have increased productivity. We have standardized our processes across the globe. We are using similar solutions across the globe. All this has a value. It's about when you are having much better data, when you are having much better processes, you improve cash flow because you are able to respond much more quickly to tax authorities than you have been used to. In Italy, I remember when I started in the company, it took us 6 years to get a refund in Italy. Today, we are 100% up to date. Like we just got approval to get full refund for 24. So that says a lot about the investment into how we've been able to deliver strong reports to tax authorities and the confidence that they have that we are doing the right thing in complex jurisdiction like Italy. And so the advice that I would give to people is to don't try to make this alone. Try to work with the different departments and try to showcase the value add that you are creating for the business and for the other department. Because when we improve through technology, we are also improving productivity in other functions. We are improving cash flow for the business. We are improving working capital for the business. And all these things, we are, preserving the reputation of the organization. In some countries like Ireland, if you don't comply upon tax audit, you are published in the journal, so in the newspaper. So I think it's very important to be able to showcase the value that you are creating for the business and not simply bring this, I have a new legislation, you need to give me the money because I need to comply. I will comply. And on top of this, I will create this value and get this across to the management and across to your stakeholders.
And how do you capture that value? Because obviously I like a lot the shift away from cost center to a value-driven function. But how do you capture that? How do you demonstrate that to your stakeholders? Because maybe in your case, I love the examples you gave, the cash and maybe faster turnarounds in overall end-to-end flows and whatnot. But how do people in the audience need to capture that value to demonstrate to the CFO and to the business that they are more than just a cost center?
The question. So we have worked on that. We do have a dashboard internally, so a management dashboard that I use. Every advice that we are giving to the business when it comes to advisory, every compliance improvement, every tax digitization project that has improved productivity, we are tracking that and we are saying, okay, if we didn't take this action, it would have costed the organization maybe that much in case of tax audits. We are tracking the risk that we have been able to mitigate. So on the one hand, we have the risk that we have tracked. We are tracking the cash flow optimization. So for example, when you are paying input VAT to your suppliers or for imports, and then you put all these exemptions import deferment schemes or exemptions where your suppliers don't bill you VAT anymore because you have implemented a simplification. All this we are tracking down, and we are looking at how much transactions we had, and we are really telling the business, this is how much you've been paying in 24, in 25, because of this is how much you've paid. So we are really able to tell exactly what was the value add of all the measures that we have implemented. And when it comes to cash flow optimization, here I think it's important, but when you are able to make sure that you get millions from jurisdictions like Italy back in 1 year, less than 1 year, rather than 6 years, you are improving. This is working capital improvement. And so that means that during 6 years, the company doesn't have to lend money doesn't have to get money from the bank. So what does that mean? That benefits that you are creating for the business, and that we are able to track down within the VAT functions. And to be honest, beyond showcasing this to the management, even for us as an indirect tax team, we like seeing our dashboards and say, hey, last year we've worked on this project and on that project, and this is what it meant in terms of productivity gains, in terms of cash flow improvement, working capital improvement. So we are tracking that down in very details.
And is it, do you also summarize it in a kind of, I don't know, a newsletter to the stakeholders, the business stakeholder or management, or do you just take the screenshots from the dashboard and you then send it across? How do people then
I don't actually, but I discuss it with our tax management and also with our business stakeholders, finance leaders. That's something that I like to show them. But I have to say we should be doing this much more because I don't think that while the direct tax team has a platform through the effective tax rate, the ETR, to exchange with the CFO, and so there is huge visibility. I don't think that the indirect tax team has that visibility. And so I think we should be able to demonstrate that much more to the business and say, hey, in fact, it doesn't reflect directly in the ETR, but this is how it reflects. And I think we should be much more vocal doing this. Now, I have to say, I'm not doing this alone. I am getting the support of a service provider to populate that dashboard. So it's not just Trane Technologies, but just know that exists, and this is how we tax the indirect tax function need to speak. It's in KPIs, it's in matrix with the management.
Yeah, 100%. And I hear that every day. The tax teams, they struggle to relay their value, to report the value which they generate to the stakeholders. And then to your point, you're just seen as yet another cost center, and you struggle to get the budget you need for the transformation of the tax function and whatnot. So very, very good feedback. In general, thinking back on or looking back at the shift from cost center to value-driven tax function, any overall do's and don'ts you have for the audience, people that are like, okay, tomorrow I want to start reporting on the value we have or generate. Any do's and don'ts you have for the audience?
Know your matrix. Know when you are working on a project, whether it's tax digitalization, whether it's compliance, whether it's cash flow optimization, import deferment, and know your matrix. Know what it means for the business. You need to know what took you time this year. You need to know how it impacts the business. So my recommendation is really to take this time with your team to understand the impacts and the value add that you have created for your business, and talk about it with the management, because otherwise you will be working as crazy and no one will understand. It will still remain an indirect tax issue. So unless you get people on board to understand what are your struggles, why is it so difficult for the time being in the indirect tax function because of the digitalization of the indirect tax function, you're not going to get your message across. And it's important because if you need that budget, it's important that they understand how this will be positive for them as well. And we should all be doing this, any function. Understand the impact that we're having on the business. Why? Is it a good spend of the money? You're asking for budget. You need to make sure that you have a business case. You're going to get that budget, and what is the value add that you're creating. So the do's is really know your matrix, and the don't do's is stop doing your job as a compliance function. Stop doing your job as simply reporting tax returns. It's not about that. It's about it's at the end of the day, we are working for a business. Reporting tax returns is one of the elements. We are more than tax reporting. And I think this is what we tend to forget as an indirect tax function is how do I support the business to grow further? And I think this should be our focus.
Fantastic. I like how explicit you are and so Atram, so super cool. We are almost at the end, but I have one interesting question, which is you are obviously very closely to technology. You're leading the technology part of the tax team as well in your company. How do you think the next generation technologies, which we are seeing today, we already refer to Gen AI or the LLMs and anything which we have, the agentic agents and all of that. What is, in your eyes, the impact of the next gen technology on how we will work as a tax function, as an in-house tax team? Any predictions you can make if you look in the next 5 years? What will be changing for the day-to-day tax operations and how will the tax function mostly be impacted?
When you look at how ChatGPT works, I'm a bit worried about the pure legal advisors, because someday that tax content is going to be there, and someday we will not be sending an email to a legal tax advisor to say, hey, what are the rules in this jurisdiction from that perspective? You're going to be able to type it in a ChatGPT-like solution. And they will tell you what is the interpretation of the tax authorities. They will tell you what is there in terms of administrative guidelines. Everything will be available in a minute, where in the past we used to have 10 pages memos for which the advisors took 1 month to prepare. So I would say that there is the technology landscape is evolving so fast, and so is the indirect tax function. And I would say that the tax advisors that don't embrace this change will probably miss it somewhere. I'm not saying that we will always need someone to interpret, because it remains a technology, right? So you will always need someone. But I would say that if you don't embrace that technology as a tax advisors, maybe invest in that, something that you can leverage yourself, then you're gonna be missing the whole thing. And I would say technology is not something that you can put on the side anymore. We had this discussion a lot when we go to conferences, and I still hear some tax departments saying, I don't want to deal with this tax digitization because my job is there. Well, I always tell them, well, you better be careful, because someday it's going to hit you whether you want it or not, because everything reflects in we are the back end of the process. So everything will reflect in tax, and you're going to be held accountable. So yeah, for me, I can see that we are evolving. I'm always listening. Solutions that I implemented 2 years ago are not valid today. And then I'm always listening to what is new. So yeah, we have to be alert.
Do you think you will be insourcing even more as a tax team in the future?
I am insourcing. Today it's the right solution. We are not saying that this will be the right solution tomorrow. So we keep assessing what is right and best for the company. And what is right today may not be right tomorrow. So this is something that I'm always open to revisit. Today, insourcing is the best solution for the company. Tomorrow, we will see with what is available in the market.
Yeah. All right, clear. So we are by the end, and then typically I have one final question for the people who are on the podcast, which is, what is one piece of advice that you would want to give to the audience, looking back at the career you have had, and maybe advice you want to give to people that one day want to be in your shoes or aspire to be a tax leader in general? What is the biggest piece of advice you would give?
I don't know if I'm, in a position to give an advice, but if I look at my own journey, I think what has been helpful is to do things with full engagement and with passion, with energy, and try to bring people in my journey. So when I'm doing things, I'm not just doing something in my team. I'm trying to get other people involved. I'm talking to other people to understand the impact it has on them. So it's not only about me, it's not only about our team, it's not only about the tax function, it's about us as an organization. And the advice that I would have is try to understand what you're doing on others and how others could help you, and try to build something with other stakeholders, because this is where success is. When people see that you are engaged and you are trying to help them and they can help you, this is how you succeed. And my focus has always been on doing things better for us as an organization, not only for tax, but everyone. So that's my piece of advice, is just be curious and be interested in what others are doing and how we could help each other.
Wow, amazing. This is really gold. So I really enjoyed it in any case. And I'm very happy about the conversation. It was full of good insights and good pieces of information for the audience. So Nora, I would say thanks a lot for being here on the podcast, and thanks for the great sharing of knowledge you're doing here.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I hope it has been helpful in any way to anyone who may be listening to this. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.